51-year-old Suzanne Simpson, a mother and realtor from Olmos Park, has been missing since October 6th. 53-year-old Brad Simpson, Suzanne's husband, remains jailed at the Bexar County Jail on domestic violence charges related to an incident that took place in the hours before Suzanne's disappearance. It is Thursday, October 17th, day 11 in the search for Suzanne. And I'm Robert Price, coming to you live on YouTube from San Antonio, Texas. We're going to be taking a deeper dive into this constantly evolving case. So keep that in mind if you are watching this sometime after today, because the facts could change. Joining me now are two reporters who have been covering this case from the very beginning. This is Stephanie Esquivel, and that's Mariza Mendoza. Both of you have covered different aspects of this case, as have I. For instance, Stephanie, you were at Sunday's vigil this past Sunday when we got the first opportunity to hear from a direct family member of Suzanne. You got a chance to talk to Suzanne's mother, 80 years old, got her thoughts on this case and her relationship, not only with her daughter and how close-knit that was, but also her relationship with Brad, her message to Suzanne's husband. Now, I know, Mariza, you've also been talking with a lot of experts, people who are experts in the field of search and rescue, people who are law enforcement experts. You've gotten their insights. You've also had a chance to speak with the police chief of Olmos Park. So we'll be asking both of you about your experiences, your insights, what you have to say about your thoughts and how transparent both law enforcement and members of the family have been throughout the past 11 days. I, too, as I mentioned, have covered various aspects of this. Last Tuesday and Wednesday, I was out in the wooded area of Olmos Park near Brad and Suzanne's home as the Alamo Search and Rescue team looked through that wooded area. This was an area where a neighbor had said he had heard screams about an hour after seeing a physical confrontation between Brad and Suzanne. Then this past Tuesday, I was at a landfill in southeast Bexar County. That's where law enforcement has spent the past 3 days looking for her body. They say they feel confident that her body is, in fact, at that landfill, but 3 days have gone by. They have still not found any key evidence, any sign of her body. They're out there right now. They'll be out there tomorrow. Again, this is Thursday. They'll be out there Friday, 17th, the 18th. Now, I want to talk to you about the challenges that we have faced personally while covering this case. I know that a lot of people who are friends and family have been pretty tight-lipped, pretty close-knit community. I can say from personal experience, I spent much of my childhood growing up in Alamo Heights. I found out that I went to the same high school as Suzanne, TMI. So I understand certain aspects of the people there and how sometimes they want to play this a little close to the vest, don't want to compromise the investigation. Many of them have been told by law enforcement, don't speak to the media. So Stephanie, Mariza, what has your experience been? I know a lot of time we've spent talking off camera with family members and friends, but when it comes to putting a microphone and a camera in front of their face, no dice. You've spoken to multiple people on the phone. Is that right, Stephanie?
I have, and everybody has something different to say, but it becomes quite difficult because everybody who is a family friend knows Suzanne and Brad as a couple. They're friends with both of them. So it comes to a point where they're losing two friends. They don't know where Suzanne is, and Brad is behind bars. So they don't want to speculate. Mm-hmm. They don't want anybody to, make up their minds because they care about both of them.
Sure.
And then there are the couple's children. Mm-hmm. These people specifically have said many times, I don't want to talk. I don't want to hurt the family. I don't want to make things worse. I just want to wait and see what happens. And so they will talk off record and say, I noticed something, but it's all things that we can't report.
Sure. But they have been comfortable speaking with you, just not on camera.
Correct. So they'll say, well, not on the record. This is what I have noticed in the past year between the couple. This is something I thought was odd. But again, we can't go on record with any of it. And as a journalist, you just kind of have to take those things in and keep them in the back of your head to see if anything later down the road starts adding up. But it's nothing that we can tell the public.
A lot of people might be watching this and say, well, just let this family grieve, leave them alone. They don't owe you anything. It's not so much that they owe us anything, it's just our experience in the past. A lot of times when it's a missing persons case, there will be a family spokesperson, someone who is leading that charge. We want answers. We want to find this person. That's just not the case right now in terms of someone who's willing to consistently go on camera and say, we want answers. Would you please help us? If you know anything, if anyone out there could please help, it would mean the world to us. You've done a lot of door knocking, I would imagine, a lot of phone calls, just nothing.
Well, Robert and Stephanie, as you both know, it's difficult with this case that remains very fluid. So things are always changing. Evidence is always being uncovered. And I think law enforcement is trying to be as transparent as they can be. However, they don't want to compromise the integrity of the case. And we all know that that's very important for whomever may be responsible for Suzanne missing, for her being at the state where she is. With that said, yes, we've spoken to a lot of people, we've spoken to neighbors, and they remain very tight-lipped and very protective of the Simpson family, for Brad and for Suzanne and for their children, their youngest being only 5 years old. So we respect that. We try to give them their space, but yet let people know that we are trying to stay on top of it. We're trying to let the public know what law enforcement is giving to us, but there's only so much information that we can release.
And another motive for us in terms of, well, why do you want to speak to family members? Why do you want to speak to friends? It's an attempt to humanize Suzanne, to let people know this is who she was. This was her job. This was her role as a mother. This is why she is so missed. This is why it's so important that we find her. That's just the attempts that we're making. We're not trying to be intrusive or be exploitative. We just want to help humanize it, especially when there's a really key aspect to this that remains unsolved. Where is Suzanne?
And we all have a better understanding of it. Like Robert said, he's from that area, so he can understand why people are very protective of the family. As a mother of a young child, of young children, I can understand why Suzanne's family, her mom friends, her school friends are very protective because kids are involved. These are people with family and friends, and they are grieving the loss of two people, a mom and a dad, and what they could be, how they're protecting the kids. I can't even imagine how her youngest is, coping with the situation, what they're saying. I was listening to Stephanie's interview with the mom during the vigil, and her grandma was saying what's going to happen with the kids financially. She said, I'm not too worried about the older kids, but the younger kids, where are the finances going to come from? Who's going to take responsibility? But I understand Barton and I guess his wife maybe are
Brad's
helping.
brother.
Yes, Brad's brother. So
And he's been very open on social media. I mean, he's been posting pretty constantly saying how appreciative he is of law enforcement, how much he understands Brad, his brother's not being very cooperative, or just flat out is not being cooperative with law enforcement. And he says, as long as Brad's not going to be cooperative, we will be cooperative.
And that's a good thing. The police have said that Brad and Suzanne's family have been very cooperative from go. The only person who has not been cooperative is Brad.
So for people watching right now, we should bring them up to speed if they're not fully familiar with this case. We're talking October 6th, 2 Sundays ago. This is day 11. So if you're watching this not on Thursday, October 17th, this is where we are right now. So I don't know, Mariza, if you don't mind, maybe we can do a little timeline, bring people up to speed of where things stand and how we got to this point.
Yeah, let's go through the timeline. Now, it all started Sunday, October 6th. Almost Park police investigators learned there was a disturbance at the Argyle, but no one reported it that night. However, the arrest affidavit states a neighbor who lives across the street from the Simpson home saw the couple fighting after returning home from the private club. And then he heard screams coming from a wooded area near their home just a few moments after. The very next day, Brad Simpson told police his wife didn't come home after learning no one picked up their 5-year-old daughter from school. Police scheduled an interview with Brad later that day. He skipped that interview. Since then, police have said Brad is uncooperative as the investigation unfolded. Police learned about the fighting between Brad and Suzanne. Almost Park police issued a clear alert, and volunteers have been looking for Suzanne at Almost Park. Now they began issuing arrest warrants for Brad Simpson. Now, early Wednesday morning, this is of last week, Brad was arrested for 2 assault charges stemming from Bexar County, one for assault causing bodily injury, family violence, and another for unlawful restraint. Bond was set for both counts at $1 million each. By Friday of last week, Simpson was transferred to the Bexar County Jail and placed on a federal hold without bond by the U.S. Marshals and ATF.
We should clarify what that means. So his bond was set at $2 million. 10% is $200,000. People think, well, maybe he can post that. That's no big deal. You mentioned that federal hold, ATF. So if he were to post bail, he would then be transferred to the custody of the U.S. Marshals.
And yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, in fact, earlier this week, he was even going to have a bond reduction hearing, but that was canceled because it was kind of a moot point. They're like, well, it doesn't really matter if you lower the bond and you post bond, you're just going to be transferred to the custody of the U.S. Marshals. So, Stephanie, maybe you can tell us about that. How does the ATF get involved? I guess that has something to do with weapons. What weapons are we talking about?
So it's my understanding that family members knew Brad Simpson was in the possession of several weapons, and they did alert law enforcement. Again, they've been very cooperative. And so whenever they released the affidavit, according to the affidavit, Brad Simpson was in possession of a short barrel rifle. Now, just to be clear, it is not illegal to own this firearm. However, ATF does require that it is registered. So whether you bought it from a dealer, a store, or an individual seller, you have to let the ATF know who is in possession of this firearm. And he was also in possession of several silencers, which silencers also have to be registered. But all of those silencers were registered. So it just didn't quite make sense why this specific rifle had not been registered. Now, whenever the ATF release that federal gun charge, everybody has been kind of asking, well, why it's not technically illegal to own it. And I spoke to a defense attorney who tells me it's, again, not so much that he had it, but that he had not let the ATF know that he was in possession. Now, let's hear from that expert who is also a previous prosecutor.
Okay.
It is possible for someone to legally obtain one of those guns, but they would need to go through a registration process with the ATF, with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And evidently that was not done.
Okay. So that was the experts. What was he saying in summation? What was he basically getting at?
Again, he was letting me know that Brad technically, could possess all of these firearms and all of these silencers, but the ATF takes it very seriously. They want to know where these weapons are, and it's mostly because they want to make sure they're not in the hands of someone who is dangerous or who is acquiring these weapons because they want to harm someone.
And let's just add, Brad faces that charge, and he could face up to 10 years in jail and up to a $250,000 fine if he is convicted. This has nothing to do with Suzanne. This has nothing to, this is just a separate charge. So this is how much law enforcement wants to keep him in jail. And I guess get him for something.
Right, that's correct. And, Bloomquist also told me that it doesn't matter who you are. If the ATF finds that you have a weapon that needs to be registered and is not registered, you will be prosecuted. So it has nothing to do with Suzanne's disappearance. Where Bloomquist speculates that Suzanne's disappearance will have a role is when he gets sentenced, right? So if they haven't been able to press other charges or gather evidence enough to sentence him for a different crime, he did say that he speculates they are going to prosecute him to the full extent and go for the 10 years in prison, which is the maximum charge.
All right, let's go back to last Sunday's vigil, the candlelight vigil. Tell me a little bit about it. You were there. It was an opportunity. Yeah, we're hearing a little sound. We're watching it right there. This was an opportunity for you to observe as they prayed for her safe return, a chance for you to possibly, walk up to some friends, talk to them, get their insights. You ultimately ended up speaking with Suzanne's mother. How did that come to be? Did you expect that? Was that a surprise? And once you did start speaking with her, what did you learn from her?
It was a complete surprise. When I first got there, I spoke to the organizer, who again was a friend of both Suzanne and Brad, and he told me that he just wanted to get their family, their loved ones together for prayer. It's been a difficult time for the entire community, and I just very respectfully sat and watched. I didn't want to be in, interviewing everybody. I understand that part of the reason they're there is to grieve. So whenever the vigil started, the organizer did point out that Suzanne's mother, Barbara Clark, was in attendance that night, and so was her sister. And, once the vigil started, Barbara did get up to speak during the vigil, and I instantly knew that following the vigil, I was going to approach her. But again, I wanted to do it very respectfully. I wanted to make sure she was comfortable, and I didn't want to ask questions that would upset her. Once the vigil wraps up, I, discreetly approached her and I asked if she would be willing to talk, and she was open to it. Now, the questions I asked her, I basically wanted to know what she knew about Suzanne's disappearance this far and what she speculates could have happened. Now, she was very open. She did tell me that she knew about prior confrontations that Suzanne and Brad had, and she was worried for Suzanne and was going to ask Suzanne to leave. So let's hear what she had to say.
Suzanne and I had an opportunity to talk an hour before a lot of this has happened, and I don't understand why and what happened, and I hope someday I'll be able to understand the situation. Well, I came up with an alternative plan for her, and I hope that she'd move in with me and have her little toddler go to the elementary school in my neighborhood. I never got to tell her the plan.
So this was imminent. Like, this was coming to a head, and she was developing a plan. Never got a chance to tell her daughter about it.
Right, and she had told me that initially the reason Suzanne had reached out that day was she was going to ask her to watch her youngest while they went to this party. She ended up changing her mind, and she also admitted to me that Suzanne had called her later that night to tell her that she had been in an altercation with Brad and her wrist and her back were hurt. Now, I don't know the extent of that altercation, and I don't think she knew either. So I think the most shocking revelation that came from that interview was that Suzanne's mother, Barbara, told me, I know and I can feel that Suzanne is not alive. And I knew the minute they called me from the child's school that Suzanne had not picked them up, that was the moment that I knew Suzanne was gone.
Well, she also said something to the effect that they talk so frequently that this amount of time would never go by without hearing from her.
Right, and she did say that for a few days she thought, well, she could be at a friend's house. That would be normal. Maybe they had an altercation and she just doesn't want to come back home. And that's what she initially thought. But she said as time went on, they spoke so frequently. When Suzanne didn't reach out to Barbara, Barbara knew something was wrong, because whether Suzanne was in hiding or whatever the case may be, she would have reached out to Barbara by then, and so far she hasn't.
Two other comments I remember her saying that stood out to me. A lot of references to alcohol. I believe she made multiple references to alcohol. Maybe Brad drank too much that night. She kind of was like giving him excuses to maybe own up to it, remove some of that culpability. Hey, I was drunk. This is what happened. I'm sorry. And she also said, if I'm not mistaken, that she wants to remain friends with him?
She did. So she told me that she would like to sit down with Brad. She wants to ask Brad what happened. And her biggest fear, what she speculates happened, is that they both maybe had a little too much to drink. They were at a party. She does know they were ingesting alcohol. And she told me this is not regular behavior from Brad. This is not part of their lives. It's not something that happens frequently. They're not always getting into fights or things of that nature. So she speculates something out of the ordinary had to happen. And she said she would like to visit with Brad. She wants to ask him face to face what happened. She did tell me that she respects him and she thinks that he is a good father. And she, at the time, told me she was planning on staying friends with him and trying to be there for him in whatever way she could, but she just, more than anything, wants to know the truth.
Can we touch on one thing? So I find it very interesting. I found it very interesting when you did the interview how calm the mom remained. And she had mentioned in your interview that she's their family is of very deep faith. And she relied very much on her prayer group that she belonged to for decades. I thought that was beautiful. I found her, just her whole spirit very calming. And I give her a lot of credit and respect for remaining so calm and peaceful and saying those things of, you know, Brad is my friend. I've known him since college. I feel like I just want to talk to him. We can sit down with the kids together and explain what happened. And you just feel for this woman. And where they had the vigil was at the Oblate, which is a very beautiful place to hold an outside mass for Catholics. And the Oblate is a place where people learning how to become a priest go and study and stay, as we all know. So just that setting for the vigil, I think speaks volumes for the family, where they come from, that area, because we have a lot of beautiful churches here in San Antonio, but to choose the Oblate and the Grotto says a lot. And I think the family really wanted to present this vigil in a beautiful way and pray for Suzanne in that way.
And I can tell you, being there, the sense was so calm. I never felt any tension of any sort. It was just prayer. That is what they came together for, was prayer. And again, Barbara told me, you know, I'm trying to stay strong for the kids. They need someone, they need me. And she told me her biggest focus was trying to get them through this tough situation, because not only do they not know where their mother is, but their father is gone too.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the sense that this was really the first open acknowledgement and acceptance that Suzanne is not alive. Is that the sense you were getting from the people there?
Whenever she told me, I can feel, I believe Suzanne is not alive, I was pretty shocked. I did not think she would say that. I didn't know that was what her family is feeling, because again, we hadn't spoken to them before. And so it definitely was shocking. It was moving. And then, you know, following that, she said, I'm okay in the sense that I got to speak to her that night. And she was looking for help from me, you know, to watch the children. And so that's what I'm going to do now.
Well, I just wanted to add, you know, we've been to the neighborhood, and we've been there when some of their family members have visited the home to probably pick up clothes and things for the kids. And I can say that the family that has stopped by the home has always been very respectful. They haven't said any mean things. They haven't.
You mean in terms of the media?
Right. They've always politely declined. You know, they've waved to us. They've said.
I mean, we should just be frank. The three of us have been in this business a long time. We've encountered
very ugly things.
Hostile environments.
Yes, yeah.
You've
Yeah.
gotten the finger a few times?
More than a few times.
Yeah.
But it's understandable. You know, it comes with the job. And I understand that they are upset and angry and wanting answers, as we all would if we were in that situation. So for people to have the respect and to just remain calm in a very difficult situation is a lot. And I'm sure it takes a lot of strength and a lot of emotional support. So I just wanted to, you know, let people know that the Simpson family, they are very much rallying around their kids who need them. And they're very shocked that Brad is not cooperating. They're very shocked that this has transpired the way it has. And to see this beautiful family that looks like they had such a perfect life, and now to come to this day where you literally have Bexar County Sheriff's Office cadets and San Antonio police cadets sifting through pounds of trash. It just breaks your heart to see that this is how a story may end. This is the last moments that their children will see and have to say about their mom. I mean, it's awful. It's just, you sit out there and you wonder, how did it come to this? And that's probably obviously what the family is thinking.
So a lot of us don't have a lot of expertise when it comes to sifting through trash, what that entails. You've tried to get some insight into the process by speaking with search and rescue outfits, Texas Search and Rescue. What have you learned from those conversations?
So they've told me that it's hard for cadaver dogs, if they do decide to bring them out or ask them to come out to those areas, because there is terrible things at a landfill, chemicals, metals, needles, things that could harm the dog. So if they do bring those types of animals out, it's going to be in a different area, in a location where the dogs can be safely sifting through it. But so far, those haven't been called in.
Yeah, I mean, they basically take it from the landfill, they get the excavator, they put it in the back of the dump truck, then they take it to another area, and they start sifting through the trash and looking for any evidence. So far, they have not found any evidence, but they say that data made it impossible for them to ignore this site. They say they feel confident that they will recover Suzanne at this location. The chief of police for Olmsted Park says so. Texas DPS, Texas Rangers leading this search, but as you mentioned, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, San Antonio Police Cadets, they're out there. We're looking at video right now. We had our drone cam up, getting a bird's eye view of the process. They're going to be back out there. They're out there right now. They'll be back out there tomorrow. They're going to be this is going to be an exhaustive search. Cyber Bob, any questions we want to get on the air before we head out?
A lot of people are asking is, how do they know? Was there GPS or something that led them to this area?
So they've been pretty tight-lipped. They did have to obtain a search warrant to search this landfill. That search warrant has been sealed. They have the ability to seal it up to 31 days, I believe, if they feel that releasing it to the public might compromise the search. So we don't know what led them to, other than the statement given to us by Fidel Villegas, the police chief for Olmsted Park Police, saying that interviews, statements, evidence, and good police work led them to this landfill.
And let's point out that police have his truck. They have Brad Simpson's black GMC truck. So one of our reporters, Destiny Fuller, had interviewed a retired FBI agent, I believe, and he believes that maybe they use the GPS system in the truck and use some triangulation system where it backtracked basically the truck on where it went, and maybe it stopped by a dumpster. That dumpster led them to, where does that dumpster go dump its trash? Possibly the landfill. So here we are. I don't know. That's just speculation. But I think his truck may have something to do with them backtracking, trying to figure out where that truck has been in the past few days, and then which led them to here, which also was probably search warrants of different properties in Bernie, their home. Who knows? Who knows what DNA may have been found in the truck? Again, that is Suzanne's husband, so there is DNA in the truck, but there technically shouldn't be blood. If there is. I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying they have the truck, and they have not released what evidence they found from the truck.
Mariza, Stephanie, just to give you a sense of how complex this case is, we had devised this rundown, as we call it, of all the topics we wanted to hit on during this YouTube program that we're putting together. We're about halfway through, and we're already going to have to wrap up. We've already gone 30 minutes. That's how much we've had to talk about, and we're just going to end it here. This is constantly evolving. Any final thoughts, though, before we do end this, in terms of your reaction to the interest level in this? You were on Nancy Grace. This has got national headlines talking about the ins and outs of this case. Does it surprise you? What was that experience like?
It doesn't surprise me that at the national level, this story has gotten a lot of attention, simply because of how Suzanne Simpson appears, the family that she created, the family that she came from, the neighborhood that she lives in. It's beautiful. Her home, her community. It's also not surprising simply because a mother just doesn't turn up missing for no reason. A mother who is in constant communication with her own family. She has young kids. She's involved with the children's school, the community. She's a realtor, so she's very much involved.
You saw her Instagram page where she was putting videos of her standing in front of homes for sale?
Right. So that's not, it's unusual. It's unusual.
I want to say my final thought is I don't think it's specifically who she is, where she comes from, the neighborhood she lived in. Since I've been here, I've also covered the Soto Guerra case. She was a pregnant teen. Her and her boyfriend, disappeared. They were later found dead in a car. that got equally as much attention, and these cases are vastly different. I think what is drawing people in are the speculations of what could have happened.
All right.
And one more thing.
Sure. No,
I just
please.
wanted to say, another interesting case that's similar to Suzanne is the Andreen McDonald case.
Absolutely.
She was a wife. She went missing.
Husband was an Air Force major.
Beautiful life, too. Beautiful woman, beautiful couple. He was convicted for her murder. He had burned her in their backyard. So that also got a lot of attention.
Up to the lesser charge of manslaughter, I believe, a much more minimal sentence. Got 20 years for the manslaughter, but people wanted, or a lot of her family wanted to see him get convicted of murder.
So
Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, that was a very complex case. Her remains, I believe, were found months later.
right.
Put it
So-
back in the headlines.
It's difficult. It's difficult to say why people gravitate to certain stories. We don't know.
Well, this was an experiment. This is the first time we've done this live on YouTube, a debrief, a chance to get a status update on where things stand with this case. I'm sure we'll do it again sometime soon. As we mentioned, this is an ever-evolving case. They're currently searching a landfill in southeast Bexar County. Where is Suzanne Simpson? We'll stay on top of this, but for Mariza Mendoza and Stephanie Esquivel, I'm Robert Price. Thank you so much for joining us.